Welcome to the party. I'm Sam Ekstrom of Locked On Sports Minnesota. Stephon Gilmore coming to save the day, and the punter battle is over.
Hey, this is Arif Hassan from the Wide Left Substack. A bunch of people in our live chat are saying morning, and though that is benign, it distresses me.
I'm Luke Braun from the Locked On Vikings podcast, and it makes sense that Arif would be unfamiliar with the concept of the morning.
Locked On Sports Minnesota podcasts. It's endless Minnesota Vikings talk with the diverse voices of your local experts. It's time for the Minnesota Football Party. It's your guys hanging out talking next level Vikings football. So join in with Arif Hassan, Locked On Vikings Luke Braun, Superior Sports Talks Luke Inman, and Vikings insider Sam Ekstrom, plus the biggest names in Minnesota football for the Minnesota Football Party. And it starts now.
Good morning, right back at everybody, and good morning, Arif Hassan. This is the Minnesota Football Party on Locked On Sports Minnesota. We are live every Monday, every Thursday on Locked On Sports Minnesota, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks for making us your first listen of the week. For your second listen today, check out Luke Braun on Locked On Vikings. Great daily Vikings content over on the Locked On Vikings podcast feed. You can find our audio on the Locked On Vikings feed wherever you get your podcasts. Stephon Gilmore signs officially with the Vikings. Vikings-Browns takeaways. Who's the wide receiver 3? Has Lewis Cine saved his 53-man life? All of that, plenty more on today's Minnesota Football Party, which, by the way, is brought to you by FanDuel. Now through September 22nd, listen closely, all FanDuel customers can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. More on that later in the show. Vikings win 27-12 on Saturday. Thanks to all the everydayers who checked out the postcast right after the game. Big engagement, big numbers again on the postcast. But probably the biggest news of the weekend was Sunday. Stephon Gilmore signs with the Minnesota Vikings, a $7 million guarantee, up to $10 million for a one-year pact with the almost 34-year-old ageless corner. We thought Patrick Peterson was ageless. Try Stephon Gilmore as well. So my question is this a desperation move, or is this a legit option that will salvage something from a deteriorating cornerback room? We start with Luke Braun.
Can it be both?
Yeah, I was going to say both also.
It's a very legit desperation move.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's like it's August 19th when he officially signs. Like, he was on the market for a reason. And I think that reason is because he was asking for $10 million as a 34-year-old corner. And the team that capitulates on that, is the team that has like the most patchwork group of cornerbacks ever now. A fourth Viking that's older than me. So I guess we've got that going for us.
Cool.
Does that make you feel better or worse about just your
pretty
life?
Bad for a bunch of reasons.
yeah. It both like kind of internally and externally.
Yeah.
So I think that like the Vikings wouldn't be doing this if they weren't desperate. I think a lot of people wouldn't be signing a 34-year-old cornerback, no matter how good he was last season, unless they had, some stuff to sort out in their quarterback room. But I mean, that's where the Vikings are, right? Some of it is not, the Vikings' fault. Some of it is, but regardless of why that's the case, the Vikings are very, very thin at cornerback. The limited opportunities we saw from one of the starters, Byron Murphy. James Kuno just said in the YouTube chat, "Don't worry, Luke, you don't look a day over 18."
Well, now I'm creeped out.
What? You got your driver's license and everything. It's cool. And you could buy cigs for all your friends.
Yeah.
Your first beer is going to taste real good.
But I do want to add that so we saw, the only starting cornerback of note that people are paying attention to, Byron Murphy, did not play well over the last, over the last couple of exposures we've had to him. So that's kind of alarming too. But Stephon Gilmore was pretty good last year, and in 2022 he was phenomenal, and in 2021 he was phenomenal, and in 2020 he was even better somehow, and in 2019 I think he was the defensive player of the year. Like, that's like 4 consecutive seasons of really elite play, followed by a pretty good season, right? The way aging tends to work for NFL players, it's more a cliff than a slope. So it could just happen at any time where he's no longer, got the goods. And it might be this year, but I don't think it's a bad gamble to make, especially given the state of the quarterback room. And if you take a look at the last 3 defenses he's played in, he has played basically an even split of man and zone. So it's not as if, he's being deployed in a very particular circumstance where he can only play one style of football. Like Patrick Peterson at the very end of his career is kind of a zone-only guy. Despite being a man coverage maven for most of his early career. Gilmore's doing both really well and has been since like about 2018. And I think that's like really nice for a defensive coordinator that has to adapt a lot to the talent that he's had around him. And so having more options available to you in coverage is going to be pretty big. Plus, he doesn't require press to play well, and the Vikings don't press very often, so that's nice too.
You know what jumps off the stat page to me with Gilmore is that he's heavily challenged by opposing quarterbacks and always holds up. Like a lot of elite cornerbacks, which you would absolutely say he was with New England, they get targeted 50, 60 times a year because quarterbacks just don't throw their way. They don't want to. They want to go to the other, side of the field. He's been challenged 90 or more times, like 4 times in his career, and all of those seasons have been outstanding. He gives up like a 50% completion rate when targeted that many times over the course of a season, including 50 out of 91 last year. That's probably my biggest takeaway is that he can handle being targeted a bunch, and he's probably going to make a lot of plays on the ball. He's going to intercept the ball. And you're going to come out ahead in the long run if you're throwing at him that many times. That's what I like to see. And he's avoided the cliff to this point. I mean, almost 34 years old. So who's saying that he can't muster up one more year? I do want to kind of put a wet blanket on this conversation. But Luke Braun, I want to hear from you first.
I just wanted to answer the question from Dylan Peterson in the chat that said what changed when he left without a deal to when he signed. I believe he was in a bidding war with the Vikings and the Panthers. So I think it just took a week for that to play out because the Panthers were very in on him too. And that took a little while.
Here's my wet blanket viewpoint. This does nothing to alleviate what a mess the cornerback room is in going forward. Because your pipeline guys,
obviously,
Caleb Evans, arrow pointing down, kind of got.
Is he a pipeline guy? He's only got 2 years left too.
I mean, it's not.
Do they have any corners under contract for more than 2 years? I don't think they do.
Dwight McGlothern is your most hopeful pipeline guy right now. You've got Murphy expiring.
Yeah.
Gilmore and Moreau and Griffin single year deals. Evans arrow pointing down. Blackman torn ACL. It's abysmal. And you've got 1 pick in the first round next year and nothing until the 5th. So you've got, if you want a good corner, you're pigeonholed in taking him in the first round, and that's your only chance. It is
Mekhi Blackman. I forgot about him, but yeah,
he's
the other pipeline guy, and he's on IR. So
correct. It is awful, and this does nothing to change that, but it gives you something to cling to in 2024. I think that this could be a serviceable cornerback group now. If Murphy, again, shaking off a bad preseason performance is not that hard. If Murphy
reminds me.
Yep. Go ahead.
Sorry. It reminds me of 2021, this was because of COVID and cap stuff, but when they had all those 1-year deals and the whole defense was made out of 1-year deals. And then, hey, the next year, at least the defense didn't totally fall apart and become the reason the Vikings couldn't advance in the playoffs despite winning 13 games, right?
You forgot to add that Nashawn Wright is part of the pipeline. I can't believe you forgot about it.
Also expiring.
For now. Will he still be a part of the pipeline in like 3 weeks?
Travis Hunter will save us, they're saying. Yeah, it's
they
bleak.
Don't need a receiver. What are you talking about?
Oh, they might need one of those too. I don't know. Let's get into receivers though in our next segment. I wanna sort out who is the wide receiver 3 with our 4-minute drill segment making its triumphant return. We've also got risers and fallers from Vikings Browns coming up next on the Minnesota Football Party. We're brought to you today by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. With eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit only available to U.S. customers.
Sam, play the sound. Play the sound. Play the sound. Play the sound.
Macho Meach is going to love this. Hold on.
All right. Technically, this news is 2 days old, but it's the first time I've seen anyone talk about it. So, Teddy Bridgewater is 1-0 as a high school head coach. Won his debut game 42-7.
Golf claps.
Let's get it.
That's really cool. That's
Yeah,
really
have
cool.
It's outstanding.
I love all the
right.
content. All the content. Give it to me. Inject it in my veins. Also, this is legitimate day of breaking news. The Vikings have settled their punting competition. They've waived Seth Vernon, and they've also waived Ty James, which is a hit to my preseason fantasy hopes. I'll have to put in a waiver claim in that regard. But they signed Justin Hall, a 5'8" receiver out of Ball State, 25 years of age, to, I guess, catch passes from Jaron Hall in Philadelphia on Saturday. J Hall to J Hall connection is going to be cooking in Philly. More importantly than all of that, let's get into our 4-minute drill.
Start the clock. It's time to execute the 4-minute drill.
Very abrupt stop on that.
That was,
They used to have a nice pleasing
surprising.
fade, and now it's very abrupt. I'm not sure what happened there.
Especially for a part of the football game meant to chew the clock. I feel like ending that abruptly kind of ruins the whole vibe of that.
Yeah. Let's start with our 4-minute drill. I want a 1-minute argument from each of you on who the wide receiver 3 is for the Vikings. Brandon Powell, Tristan Jackson, Jalen Naylor, Justin Hall. I'm getting a little bit of robot from Arif. Is that you? Are you hearing that too, Luke Braun?
Yes, I am.
Okay, a little robotic. We'll start with Luke Braun and give you some time to tap dance Arif, and then we'll parlay this into a broader discussion about Vikings-Browns. Luke Braun, you're on the clock in the 4-minute drill.
I think the answer to wide receiver 3 is pretty simple. I think Jalen Naylor has locked this one down. If he hadn't locked it down in camp with his camp performance, keeping that momentum up in the preseason, putting a ton of distance between him and Brandon Powell, as well as Tristan Jackson has played, there have also been pretty clear errors that aren't quite as obvious that would prevent him from being wide receiver 3. For Tristan Jackson, it was about, is he going to make the team or not? And I think he's very clearly jumped that hurdle. And maybe we can talk about Tristan Jackson and Brandon Powell for wide receiver 4. But in terms of the 3, Jalen Naylor has put himself head and shoulders above the rest. And if we don't have Jordan Addison right away, so he's wide receiver 2, I'm actually kind of excited to see what he can do.
Likewise, I'll take my turn as well as Arif rejoins us. I, too, believe that it's Jalen Naylor based on what he's shown when healthy over the last 3 years. whether that's garbage time at Lambeau in week 17 of the 2022 campaign, whether it's last summer when he was healthy before the cataclysmic injury that just ruined his whole year, and this year, he's shown something. I think he's earned the right to be wide receiver 3. I think Tristan Jackson is not that far away. And between the 20s, I would rather have Tristan Jackson on the field than Brandon Powell. Now, I think there's a third down specialist role for Brandon Powell that we've seen over the years with the Jarius Wrights and the Chad Beebes. But I think that Tristan Jackson passes Luke Braun's BB bar. I think he's got more to him than Brandon Powell, to be honest with you, from a deep standpoint.
I can see it.
Difficult.
Well, 200 yards is hard for wide receiver 5, but
come up. Oh, right.
The BB bar, for those who don't know, is based off of Chad Beebe's stat line from I think 2020 or 2021, which is 200 yards, 2 touchdowns, 20 catches, something like that. And if a player does not cross the BB bar, you're not allowed to be mad that the Vikings don't have him. This was mainly made in response to Tyler Johnson. Like there was a bunch of complaining because Tyler Johnson got like one big catch and it was like, oh, why couldn't we draft the Gopher? And it's like, dude, he is not statistically outpacing Chad Beebe. I don't think we get to be that mad.
Apparently, Tyler Johnson is making waves in Rams camp. Also, I have no idea
see if
how
he
to
crosses
fix
the
my
BB bar
mic,
this year.
so hopefully, refreshing the page did something. No, it didn't. Okay, great.
No,
you sound good. Look
okay.
good. Time for your
literally. I just hit to
drill.
refresh. That's great. Thank you, StreamYard, for running such a wonderful service for us. Tyler Johnson will prove you all wrong when he's wide receiver 3 for the Rams this year? ? There's not much of it. I was surprised to see this in the show notes as a debate. I think we all agree it's Jalen Nailor, right? The idea that Tristan Jackson could push for it is intriguing. Sam, I think that you're right that he's not there. I don't think he's that close, but he's been fun. And I think that having him as like a big play specialist, wide receiver 4 type, in a situation where, you need to, produce some big plays, that'd be kind of fun, right? And I think that, when you're looking for a little bit more security, having Brandon Powell there instead rotating in, that would also be kind of fun. But yeah, there's not really a ton to add here. Jalen Nailor has, been where he needs to be, on the field. You take a look at kind of the routes that they're asking him to run. And I think it's really fantastic that, his precision is there in a way that it wasn't even last year when people were hyping him up. So you add that and his natural athleticism, his ability to track the ball relatively well. Yeah, I mean, that is a pretty exciting wide receiver 3. I mean, it's getting almost to the point where I think Jalen Nailor is closer to Jordan Addison at wide receiver 2 than Tristan Jackson is to Jalen Nailor at wide receiver 3.
I'm not in the chat.
Yeah, that's good. You are a child.
I don't think I can get on board with calling him Speedy, though. You can't give yourself a cool nickname when things start going well for you. Like, it's got to be part of you coming into, like, on...
He was Speedy at Michigan State.
And
Speedy Nailor?
Okay, and he's just now like asking to be called Speedy, that he's going to be the wide receiver.
No, I think they always called him Speedy. We just didn't care because he was like on IR.
Right? Yeah, like no one's talking about him. Why would he correct anyone? Can you imagine a guy in a cast walking up to you saying, "Hey, I'd prefer if you
call me Speedy."
Now,
actually, yes, that'd be really good.
See, it's a little self-congratulatory. I would much rather if Levi Drake Rodriguez wanted to be called Speedy.
How is that not self-congratulatory? He's coming off a great game.
No, he is. Okay, well, let's pick someone up. Pick a big guy.
You can't.
Michael Juergens.
You can't
Walter
do it
Rouse.
Because your example doesn't make any sense. Your argument doesn't make any sense.
It's funny if a big fella, if William the Refrigerator Perry wanted to be called Speedy, which he wouldn't because the Refrigerator was a great nickname, that would be funnier than like an actual kind of fast person asking to be called
you only know about the Refrigerator because he had that great season. Like, I don't understand what your argument is. You can't demand a nickname.
You're in the weeds with the examples I'm using off the top of my head, where I'm just saying that I just think it's a little.
It's all about the individual player's vibes, and I think you're trying to build something more objective to push it off of, but like Cordero Patterson came into the league before he had done anything and wanted to be called flashy, and everyone was like, no, you're a phenomenal player, but no, that's great. You don't even know if you want to be called the Flash or flashy. That's weird. No, we're not doing it. And it didn't stick, right? But like some players end up with a nickname several years into their career that does end up sticking, right? The fact that everyone's calling Dwight McLaughlin Nudie, that sticks because that's the nickname he's had, right?
That's been his nickname
the Fox,
for forever.
will Kevin Burkhardt and Joe Davis say there's a big pass breakup by Nudie McLaughlin? Will that make it on?
They say Dwight.
Nudie sounds like
reference the fact that his nickname is Nudie.
That sounds like a nickname you would have in like the 70s. It sounds like a really old school nickname.
Yeah.
By the way, I remembered this from when I did the Everyman series, which is a series on Locked On Vikings where I go over the backstories of all the players. Did Nailers last year, and he got that nickname in high school. After his sophomore year, he scored a really fast
Bill
touchdown.
Is spot on. The DT for the Giants who chased down McLaughlin, that guy should be called Speedy.
That guy had me jumping out of my chair. That was awesome.
Ruled. Elijah Chapman, I think.
Is that who it was?
Yeah.
So that wasn't the guy who got hurt on the play, because one of their guys like literally got injured during that chase down, right?
Oh, really?
Yeah, Hakeem Adinajay, I think.
Former Viking.
Oh, was he here for a minute?
How do you not know this? Yeah.
Other
He's
risers
like
and fallers from the game. We spent most of the postcast talking about Lewis Cine with 10 tackles, pick, sack, physicality, one jacked up on a non-flagged hit. I thought it was flagged actually when it happened. No, that was not on him. Who else rose and fell in the Cleveland Browns game on Saturday?
Jaron Hall played shockingly well. I wouldn't say he played with timing, but he played with explosiveness and accuracy, which is really nice to see. So good for him there. Other than that, I mean, it's really hard to ignore like Lewis Cine just playing out of his mind. But Kene feels more like a running back. I kind of like the plays where he produced still don't feel like they translate. And maybe I'm just kind of holding on to a previous evaluation and I should let it go. But he played well, and I want to acknowledge that. Whether or not the way he played well is going to translate into being like a running back that gets to run between the tackles and make really quick reads, I don't know. But he played well, and that's nice. So I'll give him that.
I thought McLaughlin was a definite riser, and I think he's making a bid for CB6. Now, Gilmore's inclusion might endanger that, but I think McLaughlin has an opportunity, might also be an easy practice squad work through. I think LDR is on the team.
Yeah.
I do too. He cooked.
Yeah.
He did great.
Yeah, he's great.
Levi Drake Rodriguez, 7th round pick. Mike Renner actually put out a great mashup. Go check it out of his effort plays and violent, hits. The guy is a machine. I'm loving it.
He plays like the effort is there for sure, but I think also there's an element of playing like working smart, not hard, kind of like in the way that they have these guys taking on doubles. You'll see some guys that just kind of crash headlong in the double and go nowhere. And there's a goal line stop. It was, I think, the first drive, the first touchdown that the Browns got, where they stopped him on the one and then they got him on the next play. But that goal line stop was Levi Drake Rodriguez. Just when you're attacking a double team versus a duo run, which is what that was, why take two guys when you could take one guy? Like, pick a guy and attack his shoulder specifically. And usually in duo or zone, which is when you're going to hit the lion's share of doubles, the other guy will combo up to somebody else, leaving you one-on-one with somebody that you have leverage against. And it's kind of like a sneaky way to get through it. And they've got a bunch of these young guys doing that. It had great effect. And it's a really good habit to have. It's just kind of setting yourself up for success.
I think that, so he played a great game without stuffing the stat box. I think kind of the opposite of that might have been Andre Carter, who had a really good statistical showing. And I don't know. A lot of his pressures were completely unblocked, which, you got to make them, right? Like, I'm glad that you showed up, but really feels like that's like you take a look at kind of like who's in the backfield. You see a lot of Andre Carter. That's great. You see a lot of Bo Richter. You see a lot of Andre Carter. And I think that it'd be easy to take a look at that and say, hey, man, he's actually kind of turning it around. That's really fantastic. And I don't think that he is. I think they actually played pretty poorly. And the Vikings have a lot of options at edge rusher for their 4, 5, and possibly 6 spots. Probably not 6, but, you know. And I don't see Carter kind of making it. I don't see Bo Richter making the team necessarily either. I think that he's an easy sneak onto the practice squad, right? Same with Owen Porter. But, like, yeah, I think that when you take a look at stock up, stock down, Levi Drake Rodriguez and Andre Carter are, like, 2 examples where, like, the production isn't really telling you very much because of how good they can be without a statistic or how good they can be with, or how bad they can be with a statistic. So that's something to kind of keep in mind. Jihad Ward did not repeat the preseason 1 game, which is unfortunate, but I do think that there's, like, you know, Owen Porter played really well. I was griping in our group chat about him constantly almost getting a sack and almost getting me points in our fantasy league. Certainly he will pay back my faith in preseason week 3.
Probably
yeah,
play a lot.
and I think stock down Jaquelin Roy, right? Like, I feel like he's had 2 games where it's just been like,
Yeah, where he's been quiet and next to, like, Levi Drake Rodriguez going ham and Jalen Redmond doing a bunch of stuff. One faller that we haven't talked about a lot, but potentially the most dramatically catastrophic game on the team was Michael Jurgens. Oh my goodness, that
More
was
pressure's allowed, yeah.
rough.
yeah.
I think he had more than one instance of downward dog on the field. I mean, just real bad, like on all fours in the middle of the play because you got smoked that bad.
He So I remember watching. He's a Packers tackle now, Travis Glover. He's playing on Georgia State, right? And his left guard literally works at Lowe's right now. Like, we were looking it up. The guy is. I'm glad he got a scholarship, but it was not Division I football, and he happened to be there, and it made things look really difficult for Travis Glover. Not that Glover was like a first round pick or anything like that. Ed Ingram did not play well, but he certainly looked a lot worse because he was playing next to Michael Jurgens. Like, it's I don't think I want to give Ingram too much bonus points for having to play next to somebody who's constantly giving up the goat and making him look worse on stunts and stuff like that, because I don't think that he, independent of that, played well. But man, like, sometimes, like, people would often use the excuse that, like, you know, Matt Khalil only looks bad because the left guard position hasn't been figured out.
It's Charlie Johnson.
Yeah, and it's like that's not it. Matt Khalil's bad because he's bad. Ed Ingram is kind of in this middle zone where it's like, well, he's not, like, good and someone's making him look bad, but he's not this bad. This is crazy how awful he looks just because of the quality of the center that was next to him. So that was like really disappointing, because, like, Jurgens is kind of somebody that, you know, had like an interesting whatever. And then
I liked his Wake Forest tape. I like the pick a lot, but he's had a pretty rough preseason, and I think he's losing his job pretty handily to Dan Feeney.
Braun, you liked Ingram in the game.
I did like Ingram in the game. I just actually released a Patreon video on Ingram's pass protection and pass protection only. I kind of got annoyed because I saw like 4 blog posts when I looked for the image for the thumbnail to that Patreon. Like, you just Google Ed Ingram and you see like 6 blog posts that are all about how he's such a bust of a draft pick, and like every one of those articles just cites the PFF grade. It's like, oh my goodness, like we're all robots here.
I bet his PFF grade is probably like 40, which wouldn't be.
It's in like the 20s. It's terrible.
It was bad.
It's ridiculous.
In this game. It was. Bad.
And I'll go on. Right. This is, I think, the hardest I've ever disagreed with PFF, with the extremity that they gave to his game. I think pass blocking wise, you give up 1 pressure in like 12 snaps, you just get a terrible grade. That's just, I think, an error in their math, which if I'm reading Arif's PFF piece from last week correctly, internally there's some disagreement about the math of those 0 to 100 grades. So I feel pretty safe just kind of throwing them out. But also, like, the reaction to that is very clear. You can really tell when someone didn't say anything about Ed Ingram and then the PFF grade came out and suddenly they have the strongest opinion in the world. And it's like, let's try to think for ourselves a little. Even if you come out of that disagreeing with me, what I wanted to do was look at the fundamentals of pass protection and what you want to be doing with your feet, the way you want to kind of re-square your hips after you let a stunt go, or after somebody kind of crosses your face, how you want to kind of reset and be ready for whoever's coming next. And I came away with that. I think I can see how you could mistake a couple of those plays for really bad Ed Ingram plays, but there is no reason to be concerned off of this game. If this game doesn't tell me that Ed Ingram has regressed or gotten worse at anything, it's fine. And the one Ed Ingram problem that I have, Ed Ingram problem that I have is that he can be kind of a one-hit wonder sometimes, where in the run, he tries to finish a guy and push him off, and it just lets the guy disengage, get a re-engagement. You can lose reps that way. And that is still the case, but it's like, this is still the same Ed Ingram we had last year, and that went pretty well over the course of the season.
Let me pose just the question to be devil's advocate. Why is it Ed Ingram that's singled out as the one playing? Why is that? Because
Juergens had a 0. He had a Bradbury special. So he got it worse.
Okay. Oh my gosh, he had a 0.0. That is
he had the Bradbury special. I think it's because it's interesting. The stunt that was the one that I gave him, they actually gave that to Quessenberry, and I think they erroneously gave him 2 pressures in 12. Which will give him a really bad grade if you have 2 pressures, like just by the virtue of sample size. But I disagree with that assignment of the pressure pretty strongly, actually.
Quessenberry has 1 pressure.
And it's the sack.
24. Yeah, it's the sack. Yeah.
Yeah. They gave him that sack.
Yeah, okay, yeah. You said 2, though. I was like, very confused.
Yeah, Ed Ingram had... did I misspeak? Yeah, no, Ingram had... They gave Ingram 2, and of all the other pass pro reps, the only couple I could fathom that could be... I disagree with. The only one I would give to Ingram, evidently they did not, but I can see why they gave that one to Quessenberry because of the way that the stunt wasn't the stunt, the crasher wasn't picked up, and it left Ed Ingram in essentially a 1-on-2.
I'll say this, but whatever. In addition to kind of all of this, so like a couple of things about PFF grades. 1, read my piece. 2, the problem with a lot of these is that PFF has been trying to turn a lot of these into like rate statistics, which is generally quite useful for analysis, right? You know, the idea that, hey, a guy that throws like, 180 yards on 19 pass attempts, he had a better game than a 180-yard passing game would suggest, right? And so a rate would tell us that he actually did quite well. He almost threw it 9 yards an attempt. That's fantastic. And so rate statistics can be useful, but the problem is that they're really sensitive to, of course, these small samples, especially for low-frequency events like pressures. So if you give up 1 pressure in 12 pass blocking snaps, if you do that over the course of a season, you're not very good, right? And that makes sense, right? But the problem is because the nature of the preseason, we see these like low-frequency events that occur and we see someone with a really poor grade and we come away thinking, hey, this is probably a better evaluation than they just gave up 1 pressure. Because if you give up 1 pressure over the course of a full game, that's fine, right? That's okay if you give up 1 pressure over the course of a full game. If you do it over 12 snaps, that's a little bit more alarming if you do it every 12 snaps. And so we've got a really high error bar here. Which is like, again, another reason that the +1, -1 system was actually kind of useful because it gave you a sense of both volume and, if you did a little bit of work, rates. Second, pressures don't always lead to poor grades. You can get a poor grade on a play where you didn't give up a pressure, like a pass block loss, and you can give up a pressure where it's not graded against you at all. They just have to assign the pressure to somebody. So that's something to kind of keep in mind too. It looks like Quessenberry was not dinged for that sack at all. So they may have assigned the sack to him, right? But from a pass blocking grade, it didn't hurt him, and it looks like
that's
it did hurt him.
Even crazier to me then, because he didn't pick up the crasher the way he was supposed to, and it like Ingram didn't block either of his 2 guys, but it did put even if he did, it would have still been a sack.
Yeah, you should probably block a guy.
Yeah, no, that's the play I give him like a full ding for.
Let me just tie this up just with this thought. Not really based on his performance in this game, but more so, I do think that him playing as the only starter in the game does tell you a bit of where he's at, because Blake Brandel didn't play. And what would you say to that? They must have a lot of confidence in Blake Brandel. Well, Ed Ingram has amply more experience as an NFL starter than Blake Brandel does, and they play the same position. So that...
You think that was true last year?
And more draft capital.
Ask again, Braun.
Do you think that was because they did the same thing last year? Do you think that was true last year, or are they just seeing him as a guy that wants a little bit more runway up until the season?
I think last
it's weird
last
that they've
year
done
he
it
had
2
way
years
more
in a
to
row.
prove.
Like,
yeah,
were they thinking about benching him, but they didn't?
Yeah, I mean, I think last year they were hopeful of a little continuity helping him. He probably needed those reps going into year 2 after a really bad year 1. I think that made more sense going into year 3. Where and you've got a guard that you're literally just like crossing your fingers in Brandel and hoping that, all right, we've seen him as a swing guy. We've seen him in practice, really hoping this works out. He's not playing, but Ingram is. And KOC...
He did kind of rip in that preseason game.
And KOC...
Brandel did. He was awesome.
Correct. Yes. And I actually think he's going to be good. But KOC had a chance after the game to say, no, we didn't have Reisner, so we gave Ingram those reps. He didn't even say that. He said he's on a personal plan. Like, this is the plan that we have laid out for Ed Ingram. So I don't know. It's something. It tells me something. And I still am not ruling out that week 1, there'll be surprise Reisner Brandel combo at guard. I think there's an outside chance that happens.
Yeah, the one, like the point I want people to take out of the video that I made more than anything, because I don't need you to agree with me on my assessment of those Ed Ingram plays. I think there's absolutely ambiguity to like whether or not you're happy with the way that he got himself into a bad position and then recovered. Like there's nuance to that. But I just need people to look in the mirror and ask themselves, are you mad at Ed Ingram because you think he played bad, or are you mad at Ed Ingram because someone else that you've never met thinks he played bad?
Stealways the latter. It's always the latter, Luke Braun.
I think there's room for improvement.
We're going to revisit the cornerback room, Stephon Gilmore's inclusion, and how they sift through all the variables when they put together the 53. That's next on the Minnesota Football Party. We are brought to you today by FanDuel. Listen up. You've heard us talk a lot about FanDuel. The sports are going to start sportsing again, including football, regular season NFL football at America's #1 sports book. You have all the lines, all the preseason and regular season lines, all the futures, Vikings, Eagles. You can wager on that on Saturday. But here's what I really want to tell you. There's something new at FanDuel. You can bet $5 and get a 3-week free trial of NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. That's now through September 22nd. Then with a YouTube TV base plan, you'll be able to watch every regular season Sunday afternoon out-of-market game. All you need is a Google account and a current form of payment, and you can cancel anytime. If you're not in the Midwest, you're not in Minnesota, you want to watch the Vikings, take advantage of this offer. 3-week free trial at FanDuel. All you need to do is bet $5. FanDuel.com/lockedon. FanDuel.com/lockedon. Download America's #1 sportsbook and bet the Twins tonight in San Diego, plus 132 on the money line. That's all I got for FanDuel. We started the show with Stephon Gilmore talk. We will end the show with Stephon Gilmore talk and the cornerback room. This was my question to Luke Braun in the postcast. And even with Stephon Gilmore, still very befuddled by how they're going to put this together. These are the factors at play. Gilmore is in. Murphy is in. Shaq Griffin is hurt. Fabian Moreau is like a vague kind of average veteran. It's hard to know how they feel about him. It seems clear that they don't feel amazing about Duke Shelley. Dwight McGlothern is rising. Najee Thompson is like a floater special teams guy who's hurt. How do you put together your 53 from this cornerback group? We'll start with Arif, and then we'll circle back to Luke Braun.
Okay, I mean, this is pretty tough. I don't think, I probably wouldn't argue that, like, Fabian Moreau is like an average corner. I think that he's generally, I consider him like a bottom of the roster guy. So cutting him isn't that big a deal to me. I think they still want to get in on a Caleb Evans, despite how bad he was this last week. And apparently his camp has not been going all that great, or it's been up and down. So Gilmore, Griffin, Murphy, they're in. Caleb Evans, I think, is in. And then after that, you have to kind of sort out, like, well, they traded for Nahshon Wright. Is that somebody that they're kind of interested in? Dwight McGlothern, are they going to allow him to kind of slip through the cracks and expose him to waivers? And I think probably not. I think they're going to keep McGlothern. That gets you to 5, right? And I think that they want 6, or at least until Najee Thompson comes back, and they'll cut that for Najee Thompson. And man, that's a tough one. I'm going to go with nostalgia here and just say Duke Shelley. Like you said, they're probably not that high on him, but it's tough for me to buy into Fabian Moreau. It's tough for, like, I haven't seen any of Jalen Williams. We saw a little bit of AJ Green at the end of this game. He was fine. But yeah, I just don't really see it for anybody else. If they have 6, it would be that.
So you think that Moreau would be the easy cut of the vets there? I think that if you want that 6th floater and it's not Najee, if Najee's on the pup, I think that brings Nahshon Wright into play as a special teams ace, because I think that's where he could contribute. He's done that in Dallas. I also would raise the question, if there is any universe where Caleb Evans is trade bait, is the slightest possibility that they're that low on Evans?
Pennies on the dollar,
Who's
probably,
that high
if you're
on
doing
Evans?
that.
Who's trading for him, and what are they giving? Like, who's that high on Evans? I think the Vikings are probably higher on Evans than the 31 other teams. That's a bad scenario for a trade.
I mean, you just got to comp it out to Andrew Booth, right? Like, Andrew Booth showed nothing at the NFL level, and they got a body for him. Caleb Evans was a legitimate.
He was evaluated as a first-round talent with second-round injury concerns.
But Caleb Evans legitimately showed quality NFL starting cornerback play for, like, not a short amount of time.
That's not how NFL front offices work. I'm sorry, Sam. The pre-draft priors are really powerful, especially for a guy currently on a rookie contract. I think they can get much more out of somebody like in Andrew Booth, who they traded for peanuts, than they can out of a Caleb Evans, who...
They might have had their own pre-draft priors on Nahshon Wright, too. Like, that might have worked both ways in that trade.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. But, like, I think that in a Caleb Evans, you see a team constantly try to replace a guy, and you had a 5th-round grade on him. I don't see why you would trade for him.
Fair enough.
Wait, Sam, so if Najee is on PUP, because that was the tough part for me, was that he would have had to be the 7th corner and I'd have to cut somewhere else. But I've got Byron Murphy, Shaq Griffin, Stephon Gilmore, Caleb Evans, Fabian Moreau, and Dwight McGlothern as the 6. Who would I be missing for you?
No, you wouldn't. That would be 6.
That would be 6, and then Najee maybe a 7th if depending on what happens there. It's tough for me with Moreau because he's had a very good preseason. He's been really
like his
locked
preseason.
Down.
He's been listed 2nd on their depth chart.
Yeah, it feels like they like him more than a roster bubble. Maybe he should be a roster bubble player, but it kind of feels like they see him higher.
Yeah, that's a good point.
With Moreau, it's kind of the opposite of Gilmore, where with Gilmore, you're kind of betting on his reputation. With Moreau, you would have to be betting that, well, we've liked what we've seen recently from him in our camp. His priors aren't unbelievable. I mean, he doesn't have nearly the type of veteran resume rapport to go off of, in my opinion, as a guy like Gilmore. Like Gilmore, you could see some rust, some struggles, and you would still say, well, he's obviously going to be here because we've seen what he can do for so many years. Yeah. Opposite with
and
Moreau.
You guaranteed him $7 million. So it's
and I'm not suggesting Gilmore could even be a cut.
Right, you're just saying it's like the other side of the coin of the evaluation of Fabian Moreau, where you're shedding your priors for what you've seen in camp in the preseason.
Yeah, correct.
Yeah.
So do we think we're going to see a drastically different coverage scheme this year? After seeing a lot more zone than we anticipated.
Guys.
Yeah. Will they get back to some more man?
I would imagine just because when it was figured out, it got so thoroughly eviscerated that it was pretty clear that this was just kind of a we're putting a bandage on a gaping wound for the season, and it's working out really well. But then once the gimmick was found out, it was destroyed. So I think that you'll see certainly elements of it, but I just don't think we'll see as much of this like high soft zone blitz scheme. Like you're just not
ideally they can mix in man now. We're like the last season that they tried to mix in a lot of man coverage, Keenan Allen put up 2 bills on him. They went back to the drawing board.
The worst part is that like when you compare the blitz snaps to the non-blitz snaps, the Vikings were much better blitzing, and it just didn't feel like that because it was just like
it's up and down, and it's going to be the same thing. Where like we live and die with no seatbelts, and you're just going to have explosive plays, but you're also going to have awesome stuff happening, and it's just going to be this insane roller coaster of defense. It may end up averaging out to if it ends up averaging out to something good, it won't feel like the heyday of the Mike Zimmer defenses where you just felt like they couldn't breathe on the other side of the ball.
Let's conclude the show with our party fouls for the week. The biggest before we get to that, preseason fantasy update. Need to update those. I know people have been waiting for the results. Let's share the screen so people can see along with us here. Take this down on air production. Share screen, share tab. There we go.
Listeners love this part.
Yeah, they don't.
On our production meeting, who doesn't love it?
So those were the original. Well, these were mostly the original teams. We had a waiver claim day last week. I got Theo Jackson, didn't play. Great move, Sam. Braun got Bro Richter, got a sack. That's huge. That's 5 points for a defensive player. Arif got Owen Porter, who contributed just a little bit. Scrolling down, so you're seeing week 1 stats. Huge lead for Inman and Arif. Really separated themselves. My team was dead, 6 feet under. And then the Lewis Cine game happened.
Lewis Cine.
27.5 points. And really, that's it. Like, I got a little from Gaskin, a little from Reichard.
Bunch of zeros.
Theo Jackson, Thayer Thomas concussed, goose egg there. But everyone had a great week. I actually won the week thanks to Lewis Cine by a hair over Luke Braun. Arif, respectable. Inman, respectable. But I think it's anybody's game. Arif has a lead of about 2 points over Luke Inman. 23 points back. Luke Braun, I'm 29 points back. And I think anything could happen. Now, a little problematic that Theo Jackson is probably not going to play for me, and now they've cut Ty James, so I'm going to have at least 1-0. But week 3, preseason, anything could happen. Sammis Reyes could go off, for all we know.
Yeah, sure.
It's going to get wild.
Yeah, I don't like the directionality here. I don't like the momentum my team is carrying into week 3, as it were.
It's okay, momentum's not real.
Dallas Gant, leading scorer, MVP.
I think in preseason fantasy it's real, right? Because if your guys stop playing, they stop playing. Like you can't do much about that.
Yeah, I do. I feel very good about like Jayshon Jones and Dwayne McBride in the last game.
Right, which is like a terrifying place to be normally.
Luke Braun's team was so solid. I mean, up and down the board, got contributions.
Well, my strategy was to draft for second and third teamers and kind of draft away from the first quarter of the games.
Yeah, I mean, I was looking for a mix of that, right? That's what Naylor and Wong were for, and then I just figured that McCarthy was going to play possibly even all 3 games, but like the Gant pick was about week 3, right? And maybe week 2, and obviously week 2 it worked out for me. The McCain pick was about week 2 and week 3. The Reyes pick was hopefully about week 2 and week 3. Didn't get anything week 2. But that's what I'm going to have to rely on. I'm going to rely on Gant to have another big game, Bobby McCain to have a big game, and more than a big play. He's not actually good, which is very unfortunate because his highlights are awesome. But yeah, and then Owen Porter's going to need to convert some of these pressures into hits and some of these hits into sacks. Like, come on, man. Like, you're there. Do something.
Do something.
There it is.
Yes.
I was waiting. Okay.
I love the spirit. So let's remind people what's at stake. Winner of the preseason fantasy gets an advantage in our regular season betting contest. They get to double their winnings or halve their losses, depending on how they do that week. But they also get to choose a disadvantage week for the loser. So, Braun, you and I are battling for third here. If Arif wins, he could disadvantage us one week where we double our losses or have our winnings. So let's keep that in mind.
I hope Braun loses. Good Lord, that would...
Oh, God, please don't do this to me.
Oh, God, that would be so ideal.
Now we do party fouls.
It's time to tell you who spilled their proverbial drink on the sofa. Get ready for this week's party foul.
Playing Matt Corral.
I had the same one.
What did we say before the show, Braun? He found the end zone.
He found the end zone. That's true.
The wrong.
He and
end
Jaron
zone.
Hall found the end zone.
Wes
Just different
Phillips. See, this is why it didn't work, Braun, because they didn't have KOC in his ear. He couldn't do the Dobbs
right.
magic.
True.
Because
true.
it was Wes Phillips.
Too busy
Phillips
hanging
doesn't
out on the
have
broadcast.
that kind of mojo. Yeah. I just realized that now. No wonder. It could have worked.
We were talking about how KOC was like feeling himself a little bit too much after what he did with Dobbs and threw in Matt Corral,
Heat check.
sight unseen. Yeah, it was a heat check. But probably
unseen.
Probably not the case given that
You're
he
buying a
was
flood
in the
house.
booth.
Hey, who are you? Do you have a credential? I'm Matt Corral. Oh, you gonna play?
Oh, that's
Is
crazy.
that- are you a blogger? Matt Corral. I've never heard of you.
Yeah. You have to
cover
show,
Ole
like,
Miss?
the tweet that says you got signed. Like, no, seriously, look, it's from the Vikings account.
So Braun and I had the same party foul.
Okay.
I can pivot.
I didn't really prepare one. How about this? Bo Nix truthers. Relax. Bo Nix could be fine, right? That's entirely possible. But the idea that people who say that he actually didn't play all that well, or even, some people like Nate Tice have pointed out, ways that he's played poorly. Jackson McIntyre's pointed out how he's played poorly. JT O'Sullivan is pointing out ways that Bo Nix played poorly. Yeah, he had good statistics, right? 70+ completion percentage, had like 7 scoring drives out of 9 or something crazy like that. Those are like fine results. But I feel like it's okay if people find the guy who throws 3 yards downfield unimpressive. I promise you that's fine. Let people have takes without being called haters just for saying, hey man, I don't know. Bo Nix truthers, party foul.
And
I'll pivot to the Atlanta Falcons for not playing Michael Penix in their last preseason game.
Yeah, what are they doing?
What are you waiting for, man? Like it's not like you need him. He's gonna start the year for you. Like
I don't know why
get him
they
some
wouldn't
run.
give him reps. And this, I just hate homers in general. Falcons fans defending this are weird to me as well.
Yeah, they're like, oh, it's because he's ready.
First of all, how do you know that? Second, he could use as many reps as possible. It's not like Kirk Cousins is going to go out there, right? Like, the reps are being wasted on someone that's not going to be the quarterback of the future. It's not as if he had a ton of reps with the ones in practice either. He occasionally rotated with the ones. Not a ton of reps with the ones in practice. So in the comments, Iro keeps on wanting us to bring up, and fair enough, honestly, I don't think it's a problem. It keeps on wanting us to bring up Tua's comments that I either came last night or early this morning, where he talked about how great it was that Mike McDaniel was his head coach, because he said, imagine being told over and over again how terrible you are, and then someone every single day, and then someone shows you how good you can be. It was very emotional. But in this conversation, he also does call Brian Flores a terrible person. You have a terrible person telling you things that you don't want to hear or probably shouldn't be hearing. You're going to start believing that about yourself. I don't really have much to add. That's not good coaching. If that's the case, that's not great. Brian Flores so far has been a really phenomenal defensive coordinator for the Vikings. Sounds like he was a truly awful head coach by the Miami Dolphins, for the Miami Dolphins, and also was screwed by the Miami Dolphins at the same time, which is a truly interesting combination.
think it can be okay for a coach to be an asshole but it has to be executed properly.
Right, you have to have the emotional intelligence to figure out kind of what the impact of your words are, which is actually a thing that Zimmer was very good at in the first half of his Vikings career.
Until his brain completely melted by COVID.
Yes.
But also, I feel like Brian Flores has also sort of expressed some regret. If I recall, he's expressed some regret about how he handled some of his relationships in Miami, and sort of had that year in Pittsburgh, and like thought about it and reflected on it, and I think came out of it a different guy.
Hung out with Mike Tomlin and was like, this is coaching. This is crazy.
Yeah. I mean, yeah.
It's Mike Tomlin, Yeah.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen Mike Tomlin podcast appearances where he talks about coaching? It's the best.
Oh my
stuff.
God, yeah.
It's so good. I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
Anyway,
and he doesn't do a lot of that
anymore.
Like Mike Tomlin is definitely not an overexposed media personality, which makes the impact of his words when he does sit down and really open up so much more meaningful.
Yeah, it rules. And there's still stuff he says that I disagree with. Like, he truly does not have any patience for the draft evaluation process at all. And he really loves high potential players because he views every flaw that a player has as fixable by coaching, which is not great if you're a front office person, right? As a coach, it's nice to have that kind of confidence. So there are some things he says where I'm like, I would not bring that into the draft evaluation room. I would say that you can't just draft for ceiling and assume that your coaches can fix it. But I just think that generally speaking, the way that he approaches the conversations about coaching are really excellent. And, the numbers bear out that he's a really phenomenal coach. I mean, getting above 500 twice with Kenny Pickett is stunning.
Thanks to the viewers.
His next trick.
A quarterback by committee with Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. We're back Thursday live about 11 a.m. Central Time. We do it every Monday and Thursday. Ron Johnson show tomorrow. Basketball party Wednesday. Roundtable Friday. Full lineup. Locked On Sports Minnesota. That's Luke Braun. Locked On Vikings. Hear our audio on that feed. Arif Hassan, Wide Left Substack. I'm Sam Ekstrom. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Talk to you next time.